on Australia's business channel. This is Mediaweek.
Hello, welcome to the program. Ahead, sports rights fight complaints as Seven looks to have tied up the Tennis Australia deal. All the ratings as daytime TV hots up. And we find out about Career One's new digital headhunter offering. But first, more job losses in the media industry this week, with the West Australian calling for voluntary redundancies and some big editorial changes at News Limited. Let's get all the details with our co-host James Manning, editor and publisher of Mediaweek. There has been a string of job losses, restructuring. The latest this week, the West Australian calling for voluntary redundancies.
Sure, yeah. Look, we heard a little bit from them at the recent Seven Investor Day, and they said, look, everybody at Seven, all through the Seven West Media, is looking at, very carefully at their business models. Now we're hearing the West Australians think, look, we've got to cut back a little bit in our newsroom. We haven't heard a lot from the West Australian in the past, while newspapers all around the other publishers at Fairfax and News around the country have been restructuring, cutting back. Seen as one of the more successful newspapers in Australia, but even they find the need really to reorganise and get their business model working a bit harder for them.
So we're hearing, what, 100
About
jobs?
100 people, yeah, and they expect, I think, most of them to be voluntary, so without having to force people out of their jobs, which would be a good outcome, I guess.
Yeah. Just turning to News Limited as well, because we've heard two key execs in Queensland, David Fagan and also Michael Crutcher, are going to be leaving. Yeah,
both David Fagan, former editor of the Courier Mail, now in charge of, he's been recently in charge of News Queensland, and he spoke today after he sort of announced his departure that, look, he's been working harder to restructure of the company that will sort of pave the way for them to be, to help journalism survive, if you like. It's a leaner operation. Michael Crutcher also out. Tied in with that was 4 major appointments, if you like. So Chris Dawes moved from the Sunday Times in Perth to the Courier Mail. Peter Gleeson's moved from the Gold Coast Bulletin to the Sunday Mail, the News Limited Sunday newspaper in Brisbane. Catherine Webb has gone from the assistant editor role at the Daily Telegraph to take over the Gold Coast Bulletin, and Rod Savage has been working on that News Plus product we've talked a little bit about in recent weeks. He's taking over the Sunday Times in Perth, so a real reshuffling at the top for those newspapers.
Big changes there, isn't it? Yeah, those major metros. Just in terms of the Daily Telegraph, some news too of hiring. We've had Danny Wheeler come over, seen as a real web hotshot. Yeah,
so there's, they are still hiring people that are pertinent to their offering, if you like, and digital is very much on the menu there for the future. Yeah, the Mail Online, which I talked a little bit about when I was in Bangkok, a very successful online model. But interestingly, they don't have a paywall, of course. It's still a free model, and it always will be, according to the head of DMG Media. But he's come into the Telegraph. He'll have some interesting learnings about driving audiences, but he will be working within that paywall model, if you like. They only have a number of free articles every week before they make people subscribe, and then or make people register and then later subscribe.
Now, all of these changes coming, of course, ahead of the split, and News Corp shareholders have voted in favour of that split of the conglomerate now? Yeah,
we certainly expected that. We didn't expect much opposition, so yeah, that's another formality. I don't think there's much left to go through. We've had the 2 investor days now. June 28 is the date, the last trading day of this financial year, if you like. So the new financial year will kick off with 21st Century Fox and the new News Limited.
Now, just switching to rival Fairfax, and we've seen there the expansion of the roles of some of those senior sales executives.
Yeah, we had Ed Harrison on the show earlier this year talking a little bit about, he came on after they'd gone to this compact format, and he was talking about their offering in print and in digital. Now they've reorganised all their publishing assets into APM, they call it Australian Publishing Media. Paul Sigaloff is one of the people there. He's the national agency sales manager, if you like, and he's going to not only do those metro dailies, but everything that's published under that APM umbrella, if you like, which includes their regional, I think a lot of their magazines. Chelsea Weimer's another executive there who's now got a much broader role. She looks after their trade marketing.
Just in terms of the fight for sports rights, if you like, we've seen Seven sign a new deal for the golf with IMG Australia. Just take us through that deal firstly before we get into
anything else that's going on. IMG packages the golf, if you like, then gives it off to a broadcast. A little bit in the same way that V8's control their own sort of media coverage. They package that, then give it to Seven, who broadcast it. It's 2 tournaments, I think, the Australian Masters and the Perth International. So Seven will very much keep those 2 tournaments. So a lot of it, which you expect might be shown on some of the digital channels, possibly won't be all on free-to-air.
Now this all comes, of course, amid the fight for sports rights, live events, obviously crucial for those broadcasters to draw those eyeballs. And there was talk that Tennis Australia would put those tennis rights up for open auction, but it's reported that Seven has sealed the deal already, and 9 and 10 aren't happy.
Yeah, auction or a tender process, whatever. But everybody apparently expressed interest in getting it. Seven knew something the game was on here, so they got in early, made what they thought was a knockout offer, if you like. Probably presented to, I'm just guessing here, but probably presented to Tennis Australia. Look, there's a few conditions attached to this offer. It's pretty good. We'd really like to sign it off now for this to go ahead. Tennis Australia probably reviewed it all and said, look, yeah, this is a lot more than we're getting, maybe nearly double what you were paying under the previous agreement. We're going to be pretty happy with that. It looks like they've accepted it. And
a relationship there too, going back, what, decades?
Yeah, well? Yeah. Look, long-time broadcaster of the Australian Open, the Davis Cup as well, Seven. So yeah, they were very keen to keep it. But as I pointed out before, it's just for a 2-week period, but it's 2 weeks that are very crucial. It's sort of just at the beginning of the TV year. You can use those big ratings to preview all your new series for the start of the calendar year, the survey ratings.
Just quickly turning to ABC, and we've seen it appoint a new head of retail, ABC Commercial.
Yeah, minor controversy attached to this. The email didn't go out to everybody apparently, but then not a lot of people have interest in ABC Commercial. We do, because it's the commercial arm, and it's very interesting. Their whole ABC stores is quite a successful little operation. There's a range of branded stores, then they franchise out some ABC shops as well. I think they've been doing a little bit tough. You read between the lines in that release, they're talking about a more sustainable business model to see them through the next few years. So I think they're doing a bit of reorganising.
Just switching to radio, and there's been some more good signs in terms of ad revenue.
Yeah, look, revenue's been up. We've noted a couple of months earlier this year, revenue's been quite flat. Not a lot of progress, not a lot of growth to report. About 8% was overall. The 5 metro capitals was up. Sydney doing the best, though, up about 13%. And as we've talked about in the past, Sydney has been often the sort of the hard market for radio. It's been underperforming, so the commercial broadcast would be very happy to see some revenue sort of kicking back in here.
And Sydney were up around 13%.
Yeah, 13.4, something
very
like
good.
that. I'd want to keep that going too.
Just back to TV, and there is talk that the Parliamentary Committee, of course, we followed it earlier this year, it was reviewing that reach rule, the 75% reach rule. Do you think it will actually abolish that?
Well, if the Parliamentary Committee recommends that it be abolished, you've got to think, yeah, that's one big hurdle, but there's a few more to get through, I guess. The government's got to take that on board, and they've got to, you know, will they support that recommendation? What government will it be? You know, the Labor government's presumably not going to do anything. I don't think it can before the election. So is it a Liberal government? What will their policy be on that? Will it be in there? You know, there's going to be a lot for them to do when they get into power. Media change, is that going to be high on the agenda? You've got to think maybe early next year it might, it's got a chance of getting through.
Because there are reports that committee could come back, what, Monday and
next week and recommend it, yeah.
Abolishing it. Well, I mean, if it was abolished, how significant would that be for the broadcast industry? Would you see, you know, sweeping changes?
Well, gee whiz. Yeah, you could. It opens the way for lots of changes. You know, it seems that Southern Cross has been very keen to, you know, join up with Nine. That could certainly be back on, although Nine has just signed a new deal with Win. It all gets pretty complicated. Seven and Prime going to talk about, you know, could there be something on the cards there? Win, who could they partner up with? You know, there's lots of possibilities.
Yeah, I guess that's a debate for another time, isn't it, James? Thanks for that. We'll come back to you in a moment. Let's get the thoughts of the market, though, on those reports that reach rule could be indeed abolished, or recommended that it be abolished. Let's have a listen to Evan Lucas from IG.
Until today, it's been a very sort of quiet week with regards to the media this week. However, today we've seen media reports starting to surface that there is a possibility that we could actually see that reach rule that's been probably a bit of a hindrance to Nine actually may be coming off. There is talk that the committee may wind that back, and that actually gives Nine a really good chance to do a back-end IPO. does also put the Southern Cross Media and also Win back in play as well. We did see that Nine did a tie-over with Win, and doing that cricket rights, it bought up the Adelaide and also the Perth assets. So that makes it a little bit more cloudy. But if the Southern Cross and Nine deal wants to go ahead, it certainly could be back on the cards with this wind back. It may actually see Southern Cross moving up a little bit higher, considering Southern Cross hasn't committed to 10 yet, even with it coming to an end probably in about the end of 3 or 4 weeks' time. So interesting situation for the media stocks. It will be very interesting to watch. They have been pushed down because the whole market has moved away, but it is finally a bit of a chance to see whether or not Nine can get itself onto the market this year and whether or not they can do it as cheap as possible, which would be that back-end idea. That's the biggest play we're going to see out of media over the next couple of weeks, and a space we well and truly are watching. Watch Southern Cross, watch 10, and also watch Win.
Stay with us. Coming up on Media Week, we're going to be joined by Career One CEO Karen Lawson to hear more about the new digital headhunter offering.